Hey, what's up everybody? I'm Tomas.
I'm Thomas.
And this is TechBus. Quick side note before we get started. We reformatted all the episodes. So if you see that this is episode 5, but the last episode was episode 8, it's because we transformed the first 4 into pilots. So from now on, this is 5, 6. We won't confuse you guys anymore. But just to get started, I just want to let you know we have a special guest here, Paul Oliver from Vosaic. I'm going to let him introduce himself, tell him a little about himself, and then we'll come back and get into some interesting topics.
So yeah, as he said, I'm Paul Oliver. I'm with Vosaic. I'm the principal software architect, I believe is my title. But what we do is we take the video analysis in the cloud. So if you've ever seen Huddle and what they do for sports, we do that for education. So think about that nursing student that's going through a simulation. You want to make sure that they're doing things right and they're not killing people. So we film that and we give them teachable moments, and we can take them into another classroom and debrief. We use AWS and we do .NET, and we're doing Ember.js if you're interested in those sorts of things. But I also own a Bitcoin business with a few other people here in the Omaha area, and so I'm real passionate about Bitcoin as well. Hopefully we can talk about some of those things today, and I'm excited to be here on TechBus.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. When we get back, we'll jump into some of those things. Thanks for joining us today.
So Paul and I got to know each other at Farm Credit Services. I was employed there and I was a contractor. And since then, he's been part of 2 startups, and you were also part of another startup earlier in your career.
Yes,
so one of the things I want to talk about, because we have another office space out at the Omaha Collaborative Startup, so getting involved with the startup community is always kind of interesting. So I'm curious to hear about your experience, kind of working both in the corporate IT sector, but then also being involved in a couple of startups, like your experiences, what you've learned, and just kind of talk about that. So
absolutely. So first startup I was a part of was called iSecureTrack, and it was the cool startup that everybody wanted to be a part of back in the early 2000s, because what we did was sex offender tracking, and they get to wear GPS devices, and we were designing these things, we designed the hardware soldering stuff. And then I was building the web front end to make sure, the bad guys weren't hanging out at the school. A lot of great, crazy stories from those days, as you can imagine. So, a couple examples. For instance, in the monitoring center, we had a device for people that were home arrest and they weren't allowed to have alcohol, and they had a computer thing that would take your picture, and you blew into a breathalyzer and it would tell you your blood alcohol and took a picture of you. Cool, right? Neat technology, except a lot of times we had to employ people to watch and just sit in a room full of monitors and watch it as people blew in this device and make sure it was really them. And we had some interesting folks, like for example, one woman lived with her identical twin, but she had a tattoo on her chest.
Is this
right
from
here.
like the Matrix, where they have like all those?
It was like that.
Instead of Neo, it's
so
like
there's all
drunk
black
people.
and white. It was. Hopefully they weren't drunk. If they were, they had to go back to jail. But they would go in and they'd blow in this tube and they'd say, "This is the monitoring center. Blow in the tube. Make sure you're fine." And one woman that lived with her identical twin would have to blow in it and then hold down her shirt to show her tattoo. So it's just kind of like the crazy stuff. Sometimes because you called at random times, like it would just automatically dial their house, and you could hear what's going on in the room. So there'd be people in mid-fight, like yelling at each other, you never take out the trash, or whatever. So it was just crazy. But that's the cool thing about startups, is that we had some crazy things happen. Made life really fun. I mean, you form these bonds with people that you never really tend to form at the big corporate places.
For sure.
We'd have at Christmas parties, we try to get the entire executive team to race against each other out in the parking lot. Stuff that you never see at a real stodgy, like play by the rules sort of place. And so I still have reunions with people from my startup days. Like we get together and we have a lot of fun reminiscing, just reliving kind of the crazy stuff. But you don't really see that with the corporate place. Now, the corporate places, you get a lot of training, you get resources. Like if somebody needs to buy some $300 software tool to get their job done, you usually can get it approved at a big place. At a startup, it's like, see if you can write it yourself. You're gonna spend October writing this. Never mind that we're gonna pay you for that. We would have saved money just by buying it, but we're just gonna have you rewrite it. So
Now,
that's kind of the beauty of it.
Did that startup turn into a corporation, or are you still part of that startup, or what happened?
So that iSecure Track, that startup, the first one out of college, it ended up changing hands a few times. They burned some money. They had some clients. They were actually doing some overseas stuff. But another interesting thing is you'll see a lot of times poor leadership in these startups.
Right.
They'll just be a friend of a friend that comes in and runs the show.
Mm-hmm.
We had one leader decided we should focus on injecting GPS tracking chips in the umbilical cords of babies after they're born, which they only have it for a few days. Apparently this was a huge
one of those
problem.
startup ideas that everyone was trying to get on.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. It's a huge deal, right?
Right.
But one of the leaders that was calling the shots said we should devote resources to inventing this technology, and everybody else in the room was like, this is so dumb. This is a waste of resources. Why are we doing this? But they did it, right? They burned money on this. And this is what kills startups a lot.
Do you think a lot of times startups are like, they're trying to solve problems that are maybe too big? Like if they start with a smaller problem and get some success with that small problem, and then, instead of just trying to be Google,
like, shiny, right? What's the exciting thing? You call some customer up and they say, we're not interested in buying your startup product today. But you know what problem we're having? We're really having a problem with babies getting stolen, or whatever it is. And they say, you know what? We should research this. It's a common response.
Right.
And so it's that narrow focus is what startups need. They need to get a couple customers on board first. Have them pay you to build your product and do the concierge as a service is what we call it, where maybe you don't have the software that does it yet, but maybe you just make up a web page. Say you want to make a web service that takes your car and takes it in for an oil change automatically while you're at work, and you don't want to build out the software for that yet. First, you want to get people to pay you for this service, and maybe you make a web page that they just fill in. I want my oil changed every Wednesday, every first Wednesday every month, and then it just sends you an email, and then you take this email and you just manually do everything for a while until you automate it. That's what companies should do, instead of jumping after every single whim that somebody brings up on a sales call. But as far as all three startups I've been a part of have had their ups and downs, and the third one I'm a part of is Vosaic, and it's a startup, but it's not really a startup. So before this, I was at Idea 5, which was an incredible experience for me because there was 25 of us in a room trying to pursue the same problem. It's still around. There's still a few people there, but it's definitely down to a smaller crew of people. There's maybe 3 people that work there now, and I hope they pull it out. But some lessons I've learned from that is just launch earlier. You should launch your product when you're embarrassed to even show it to people, because you need that feedback from people. You can't just hope that you're building the right thing, and then when you running out of money, just release it and then hope people buy it, because you don't have enough time to react to what people really want. And that's a problem we ran into at ID5. We just waited way too long. We didn't get the feedback that we were building for the wrong person. And eventually it can be fixed. It can be brought to the right person at ID5, but they're just going to need to keep the doors open a little longer, the runway a little longer. I'm at Vosaic now, and we are funded 100% by Nelnet, which is a really big company in Lincoln, and then Huddle, which is a really big company.
So is this almost kind of like a hybrid? It's like the startup culture feel, but you have the financial power of like a larger corporation.
Exactly.
It's kind of the best of both worlds.
It is.
It's a sister company.
Awesome. Their sister company, child company, maybe you could say. So,
But do they allow you to be, like, I always think the strongest part of a startup is like being agile. It's a weakness and a strength, like, oh, we're just going to change the whole business model because some guy came up with an idea.
Yeah.
So like, that's obviously can be detrimental, but can also be really powerful because you can just navigate and change direction
yes.
quickly. So do you get that freedom at your current role,
Yeah.
but also the financial backing?
So you hit the nail on the head. That is the strength of a startup, and if you embrace that, it works really well. Especially if you're in a big company that struggles with these, I don't know, red tape everywhere, traditions. This is how we do it, how we've always done it. You know, if they struggle with that, what Huddle and Nelnet have done, this is really cool, is that they actually bought some space in the Fuse co-working space in Lincoln, and so I'm surrounded by other startups, like co-work environment, and we're all sort of kind of working really hard to achieve our dreams, and we don't have the red tape, so we can be agile, we can be flexible. When it comes to big boy questions, big girl questions, like should we hire somebody else, or what's our team going to look like next year? We have to involve the corporate heads in the conversation so we don't shoot ourselves in the foot and just, hire a bunch of like professional dancers to come and entertain us, something silly. But we do have runway, we have, flexibility. We also have that security that comes from knowing that, hey, I got a 401k and, health insurance is okay and we're not gonna have to worry about do this. One of my startups, we were told one time, we had an all company meeting, there's like 25 employees. This was not Idea 5, but we were told, hey, got some good news. Called the banker and they said, you can cash your checks. If you come in today, right after work, you'll cash your checks. But if you come in on Monday, they can't guarantee that you'll be able to cash the check. We had to move some things around, but I think we can make payroll this week. So that was kind of like a common thing we'd hear. It was a little nerve-wracking, and it was one of those things where you wouldn't tell your spouse. You come home, oh, things are good, we got paid again, so that's good. But this is, startups are awesome for those things. Sometimes you're in a corporate environment, you get, bogged down in all the endless meetings and all the rules and stuff. But then you step out and you go into the startup world, and it's scary if you're not used to that. So if you are, stuck in a dead-end job, you feel like, and your boss just doesn't understand how great you are, and you want your appeal is, I'm going to go jump into a startup and I'll be the, the king or the queen there. Take a step back and realize that, well, how scared will you be when you get that call that, hey, we're not able to make payroll this month unless we make this one sale. If that scares you, then don't go to a startup. So that's not your world.
I believe it or not, I used to actually be a mechanic like 10 years ago.
No way.
Yeah. And I was working for a small independent mechanic shop, and I remember the owner sold some old, like, crappy 1990s van to a customer, and he's like, yes, I can make payroll. I was like, are you serious? He's like, you could see he was kind of thinking like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that out loud. But
wow,
similar type of experience, different industry, but yeah.
Which is, you probably, if you're, young and you don't have a family to support, that probably is exciting. That stuff's awesome. Maybe, maybe that's something that appeals to you. It's not appealing to everyone though.
I mean, I get what you're saying. I like risk. I kind of started my own company and always want to do things with startups. And I know you've been involved in startups, but I think it was Paul Yoder was telling me you had like an idea, an enterprise mapper or something like that.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about like trying to start something yourself? And if so, like what has kept you from maybe taking that leap of faith?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yes, I have read a book by Rob Walling called Start Small, Stay Small. Highly recommend that book. But its target audience is someone that you can write a web application or a web page, and you want to start your own business, but you don't want to go out and hire 10 people to do it. And I took that idea and I saw a need for us in Farm Credit to just keep track of what apps are out there deployed, what's talking to what. Does this depend on version 2 of that service or version 3? And so I built that tool based on that. And I'd get up every morning, 5:30, just work on my dream, right? And then I'd go to work, and that was the thing. And it's a working product. I just never got the hustle to get out there and sell. It's easy to get excited to build something, but then the hardest part starts when it's time to sell that product. And so this is where I failed. to go out and sell it, get customers, and it's still, the dream's still there, but it's more, I need to dedicate the time and then just kind of like become a salesman.
Yeah, that's, I mean, something I've learned. I listened to startups for the rest of us too, and I actually went to MicroConf this fall with Paul.
Yeah.
And I got to meet Rob.
Oh, cool.
It's pretty cool. But yeah, what I learned from that is like, I know it seems like every software developer kind of has this dream of like starting the next product and living off that. And what I learned from MicroConf, I got to meet hundreds of people that have actually done that, and they're like, marketing is almost a more important skill set than being a great engineer, which I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but that's kind of I know there's those dream stories where you just make something and everybody loves it, and it's even harder now, I think. Like if you look at the startup space, there's just so many apps that do everything for every little niche, and it's like you really gotta think through that part, and I think that doesn't come naturally to engineers. And if you're not willing to learn that skill set, I would say either don't do it or find a founder who has that, and don't undervalue that. I think it's easy for engineers to say like, oh, sales and marketing, like anybody can do that. Like I'm the engineer, I'm the genius here, it should all be me, but that's just not true. Like you find a founder who has that complementing skill set. Like, yeah, you can be the engineer, but find somebody who's an awesome marketer, and that would be my recommendation. Or just realize it's going to take a really long time.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
It's well said. I can't agree more. Seeing, we both know Paul Yoder. I don't know if Tomas, if you met him before, but built a tool himself. It's called Donor Elf, and he saw a need for it at the organization he was at. And what it does is it just helps people that raise support. It helps you keep track of all that. And he built this, by hand. Mornings he'd wake up and then he'd go to his day job. And he built it up to a point where he was wearing the marketing hat, he's wearing the sales hat. He didn't have a co-founder, but he had to learn this skill. And then he got to the point where he was able to make the sales come in and get to the point where the sales were coming in. He got to the point where he was able to quit his day job and focus on this primarily. And it's a great story. And you hear people do this and you think, oh, it's never happened to me, but it really came down to just hard work and then focusing on that marketing piece for him.
I have a quote on my wall that says, here in the office, it says, your job is not to be creative. Everyone is creative. Your job is to ship. And I think there's, like, everyone's creative to some respect. And, it's just a matter of getting out there and doing that. I think we're coming kind of close to the end of the segment here, though, so to cut the conversation off, but we'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We can talk about this some more. We might jump into some Bitcoin, a couple other topics, but just stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Last segment we were talking about startups, and before we get into the Bitcoin, which you guys can educate me on, I still have no idea.
Nerd money.
He explained it to me, and my brain was scrambled.
I brought this into work one day, and he's like, "What's that?" He's like, "Oh," I was like, "I'm gonna go print some money," and he was, I think he was thinking like, maybe I should be looking for a new job.
Yeah, and I was like picking it up, and like, what's in it?
The files are in the computer.
Before we get to that, I just want to talk a little bit about HTC.
Yeah.
So you're our third speaker from HTC. So we had Arthur Doller and then Grant from Brick. And so far this is another awesome episode. So I wanted to get your idea. You told me you went to 5 of them. So kind of tell me your overview of this year and how does it compare? I imagine, has it progressed, or how do you feel about the format?
Great question. Yeah. So HCC, for those not educated on it, it's Heartland Developer Conference. It's early September every year here in Omaha, and I've been to it when it was started at the CenturyLink, and it was the Quest then, I think. And it's kind of focused in on its niche. It used to be .NET only, and they wouldn't talk about web much. They wouldn't talk about JavaScript or what's going on there. It was really just .NET, BizTalk, that sort of thing. And then they started opening it up to iOS, and then as web's blown up, now JavaScript tends to be really big. Now a lot of the sessions are things like Angular, JS, and those sorts of things. It's a great conference for local folks, even if you're in, people drive down from Rapid City, South Dakota, Des Moines. They come from all over, but it's incredible value. And I've been to conferences all over the U.S. For technical stuff, and a lot of these sessions stack up with what you'd find at a national conference.
Really?
And sometimes you're going to get better speakers at HTC than you've had at a national conference. For example, we've had Scott Hanselman and Scott Guthrie, who are the two rock stars of Microsoft for technical speech.
I got to hang out with Hanselman a couple years back. It was kind of weird.
At HTC?
Yeah, we were hanging out talking in the front, and I was kind of asking, like, hey, are you like, you know, it's kind of weird because I feel like I know you, and you don't know me. He's kind of like he's a nerd celebrity, basically.
Right. He is a nerd celebrity.
And that's what he told me. He's like, yeah, my wife asked me if I'm a celebrity. And I'm like, yeah, kind of, with like 25-year-old men. They're YouTubers, that's about it.
I was so proud. I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, Scott Guthrie was in town, and he's a pretty big name at Microsoft, and he was giving the keynote. And he said, if you ask him a good question, he'll give you a t-shirt. He had some t-shirts, and I, you know, nobody was asking questions. So I raised my hand, and he looked at me really serious, and I said, boxers or briefs? And he laughed and gave me a shirt, and then he said boxers. So now we all know. And that was it. But anyway, it's just HTC really does attract some great speakers. We had some good ones this year.
Is this the first time hosting?
This is my first year as an MC, yeah. And so I was humbled. I always got annoyed by people saying humbled, because I'm like, well, you should say you're bragging about it. You can't say you're humbled. But now I know what it means, because I feel like, look, I'm not qualified. I'm just a regular guy. You know, this is crazy that you're asking me to do this, but I'll gladly do it if you think I can do a good job. So now I know how humble it is.
If you don't mind me asking.
The organizer of HTC, his name's Dave Venkat, and he works with AIM. And they were kind of going around the room. Who do you think would be a good person? And I filled the AIM board with all my friends, and so I made sure they're all on the board so they could.
So that brings up a question for me though. Like, you're obviously a very technical person, but you also don't have a problem speaking in front of. I've seen you speak several times, and you seem to kind of get energy from that. Are you an introvert or an extrovert, or what? You know.
Man, that's a good question. I'm an introvert as well, but I will. But I can go and just get up in front of a crowd and like just kind of zone in on getting people in that, and then I want to go back to my little cave and, you know, shut the door and, you know, game. So, but you know, in high school, I don't know if you guys, you know, there's a lot of kids that decided, I'm not going to do drama or speech or any of those things. That's not useful or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I just did it because it looked like it'd be fun and just to try it. And I'm so glad I did. So I'm always going to push kids to get into those things, because you got to get comfortable in front of a crowd. It really helps down the road, and it does pay off more than you think. That extra calculus class you think is going to take that you think will, you know, shoot you to the next level in your career. It doesn't really. It really comes down to just talking to people.
How's that helped you in your career in IT?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Because look, in IT, I mean, not to dog on our industry, but it's not filled with a lot of like Hollywood actor stars, right? It's pretty easy to just be to stand out if you go out of your way to just get to know people and hear their story. And if you want to sit down with somebody and they're having a computer problem, and you engage with them face to face, and then you can turn around and communicate well, that makes a big difference in your career, way more than being able to write that code, you know, that app in 3 lines of code. Like, nobody cares. Just how do you make people feel? Are you helping them solve their problems? I don't care how many lines of code it takes to write it.
What advice would you give? Because I bet there's I know a lot of developers out there who are genius developers, but they can't interview, and I think, you know, kind of stunts their career because they get so nervous or whatever. Like, do you have any advice for maybe people to help them kind of get out of their shell?
So, just in the basic level, just be real pragmatic. There's some great books out there that I've read on this too, but some of the best advice has always been just repeat back what people are saying to you to make sure you understand it. You might not know how to respond, but if they say something, so you're saying when you click the mouse on this menu button, the application crashes, and what do you mean by crash? And just repeat that, and then also just get to, you know, ask questions about people. Somebody asked me once, or told me once, when you go to a gathering, just think of any tech gathering with a bunch of, you know, introverts. People are just so scared to talk to people. When you go to those gatherings, make it your mission that anybody you talk to, act like you're a detective. Every person there has something really interesting and cool about their life. And make it your mission to find out what that is. Act like you're a reporter and you're trying to solve it. I mean, it's just not gaming relationships. I'm not saying, I'm genuine when I talk to people. I really want to know. But now when I remind myself, this person has really got something interesting, I love to get to the bottom of where it is at. And I enjoy it. I'm not trying to like flatter people or make them be fake. I'm totally being genuine. But if you go into those, I'm scared to talk to this group of people, pick out 2-3 people, maybe just one person, and then say, okay, I'm on a mission to find out what's interesting about them. What makes them tick? Maybe it was, maybe it was some cool job they had in college. And then lastly, if you're not sure what to ask somebody, just ask them, how did you get into this line of work? And that always gets you some good conversation material.
Awesome. So in your position right now, do you deal with a lot of people that have that answer to you? And if you do you feel that you can relate to them because you're in the higher position, but you're also a software developer? Is that what kind of gives you Is that what kind of gives you your confidence?
So in my last role at Idea 5, I had 4 people report to me.
Okay.
And I could identify with people because I cared, right? Mm-hmm. So I made sure I was having one-on-ones with people and getting to know them and asking more questions about them than talking about myself. And because of that, people trusted me when I said, look, we need to do this, we need to go a different direction now. If I didn't get to know people on that level, I don't think they would have trusted me. Mm-hmm. And I think, and then also being able to relate to people. If you're technical and you can understand what they're saying, yes, that helps, for sure. I don't want to say you can't lead developers if you're not a developer yourself. That's not true. Mm-hmm. But if you're not a developer and you're trying to lead developers, then you better ask a lot of questions and get to know them well, don't try to talk down to folks. The other thing is just treat people like they're people, like they're intelligent. And I've been in places where the managers would come in and they would just tell people how it is, and they wouldn't listen to ideas. They just said, no, we know the plan, we know how to solve all our problems, don't talk to us, we don't want to hear what you think. Ask for feedback, that helps a lot.
So what was the highlight of this year at HTC?
Highlight at HTC for me was, I got a chance, when I was introducing people, I got to meet them, just kind of talk to them on a one-to-one basis. And all the speakers are great, but it was really neat kind of seeing that these people are just real folks, right? So got a chance to talk to Tara Wheeler. She wrote a book called Women in Tech, and just getting to know her, she's just a regular person from the West Coast, and she went to school in Wyoming, and she just really likes Star Trek and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it was neat to know them, and it just solidified. And remember when you're young in your career and you meet people and you're starstruck and you're thinking, wow, they've done great things. Right. But really when it comes down to, they're just like us. They just kind of had some breaks in life and they made some good decisions and they have a little more confidence, so they probably got put in a different spotlight. Right. But seeing that was cool. And then got me to use the HoloLens.
Oh, yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. Did you use that yet?
I did, but I didn't have as experience as you did. He told me about it. Tell us.
So I was telling him, like, yeah, it's so awesome. Like, you're in this thing, and like I was looking at the wall, and this robot starts coming out the wall, and I'm like shooting lasers at these things and flying all around. So he gets in line to wait there, and then like for some reason when he got up there, it was like Jenga.
What?
Yeah, like virtual Jenga. It was like barely worked.
What's the point of that? So that's not a HoloLens. That's just regular VR.
Right.
It's cool when the stuff's coming on the wall.
I was like, I don't like regular Jenga. I like simulated Jenga.
It's the worst.
So I was probably like, how everybody's there for their full 15 minutes, and I was like, I'm done. And the lady's like, what's wrong with this guy? I'm like, yeah, I'm not.
It's like simulating something you don't like.
Right.
You're at your desk, don't you type up some emails?
The program loads and it says have to work on a Saturday. Get to go to work on a Saturday.
Yeah, never mind. I'm gonna return this at the store.
So
Yeah, that was really cool. The HoloLens.
Yeah.
I do. Do you think that will
Depending
change
on what you
things?
got.
Yeah. Well, I had a murder scene. It was or like a crime scene. And it was like rats running around.
Oh my
and stuff.
God.
Yeah, you missed out. Jenga man.
Jenga.
Wasn't that a line from gosh, what is that song? Oh, it's just that Jenga man, Pimp C, and do you?
Jenga man.
Yeah, it's Jenga man. It's not Jenga man. You're Jenga man.
But you were gonna say yeah.
That was the highlight for me. Was the HoloLens. Just.
But you were gonna ask the question. Do you think it's gonna?
Do you think the HoloLens will change our industry in the next 10 years?
My opinion, so going into it, I honestly thought it was going to be gimmicky and janky. Because I've done VR before.
Yes.
And I just felt sick. I was like, I can only stay in this for like 5 seconds.
Why? Because it was clumsy or what?
No, it's just too much. It's like overwhelming.
And you're surrounded by cartoons. It doesn't look real.
Yeah.
And if it does, it's just...
I just found it too overwhelming. But this, honestly, I think was really cool. Like I think it sounds cliche, it's like game changer or whatever, but I think it does, I don't know, I just thought it was really cool and I can see the potential there. It's obviously kind of like phase 1, so it's still not as good as I think they can get it, but I think it was actually much cooler than VR, so that was my take on it.
So what could be the real life applications of that?
Well, they had Peter Hewitt there, and I think they're starting to use it for like job sites, kind of like visualizing where a building would be and stuff like that.
To put the building here.
Yeah.
Okay, I can see that. Yeah.
I think there could be so many applications. And the cool thing is, it's just Unity. I don't know if you've messed with Unity, but it's like C# JavaScript. You can develop against it, and it's really not that, actually they made it so easy for a lot of the game development stuff. I think there's a lot of application for engineering, probably medical. I don't know. What about Vosaic? I mean, that almost seems like something you guys could use with.
Well, that's my thought. Is this can be huge in education. Think about what you could do if you loaded up a simulation of you're an ambulance and you come up upon a scene of a car accident or something, and just simulate that. And because with that HoloLens, you can go around and it detects where you're at, and it'll like put the object right there on the surface. It was so cool when I put it on and the rat was running around the room and it ran under a table and I couldn't see it anymore. But then when I moved my head like this, you could see the rat again. It was like, whoa, it felt so real.
When the aliens were shooting at me in the one I did and it missed, it would hit the wall and literally break a hole in the wall and it made boards.
And I saw that. I did the same one.
Yeah.
And the laser come right for your face or something.
I almost feel way too jaded to be a part of this conversation anymore.
You better.
How are the Jenga blocks?
Do they explode when you... No.
Well, and then you touched it the whole day for a moment.
At least it's realistic.
Did they make you like have to set it back up? It take 3 minutes.
Yeah, it doesn't even have the auto reset. You have to like literally stack
I
it.
think the coolest feature was I could walk through the blocks to look at the angle. Yeah,
that's kind of cool. Thumbs up.
I'm so
that sounds
jaded
exciting.
right now. I'm so jaded.
HCC though, I mean, just I think they found their niche. It's really fun to go every year. It's the highlight of my year as far as like tech stuff in the Omaha area, and I think it's the value is there for anybody to go if they're into programming.
So we're coming up on the end of this segment too here, but I want to ask you one quick question. With Vosaic, are they letting you mess around with that yet, or is that just an idea phase, or can you say?
With the software
using
or HoloLens, Vosaic's not working with the HoloLens yet. However, one cool thing that we are trying to do, there are robots that can do surgery, which is really cool. And so if you're a surgeon and you want to get in and do something really on a micro scale, you can do surgery with these robots and these arms, and they have cameras. So Vosaic's working with, there's a local company in Lincoln made by one of their doctors there, and he is, they have the products in use now. It can remove, I think, a gallbladder, for example, and you get a gallbladder robot. Basically, it's like a magnetic arm with cameras. And so Vosaic's going to be working with them. We're hoping to help them with their video capture so that you can watch the surgery afterwards if there's some problems or whatever, or there was a training situation. So
I just told Tom about the article I read where they had a robots were doing eye surgery because it was so, you know, if you're just a millimeter off, you know, and you can.
I think doctors are, like the newer doctors are going to prefer this because they're still in control, but they don't have, like, if you move like this, it's not going to rip somebody's, you know, blood vessels.
Right.
So.
I can't talk about eyes. I had my eyelid cut off when I was like 5 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Sewed it back on. You see the scar?
Wow.
Oh, crap.
Yeah.
That's why you went into becoming a mechanic.
Yeah.
She said, I'm going to stick my eyes under heavy.
Yeah. No, that's why I went into
Metal
software, because I didn't want to die on the job. So.
Was that a hockey accident?
No, me and my cousin were sword fighting with mops, and there was a hook on the end of one, and he caught it.
Wow.
Ooh, this is totally off topic.
And next we'll get into the technology of putting back eyelids on.
Yeah, the idea of a robot doing surgery on my eye just gives me, makes me feel
I don't blame
sick.
you. I don't blame you.
That's your ideal world, man. Robots doing everything. This guy, he can't wait for the Terminator age to come.
I don't know if I like it. I just think it's happening. All right. Well, we'll cut this segment. We'll come back with our next segment. Hopefully, talk about Bitcoin and whatever else comes up. So stay tuned. We're going to do one more segment here with Paul Oliver, and I don't know if you noticed, we got this little black box sitting on the desk, which is a Bitcoin miner, and I know Paul and one of his friends, Edward, who I know as well, have a company called Alpha
Resources.
Alpha Resources. So first, maybe just kind of explain to our audience, like, what is Bitcoin? And what you guys are trying to do with Alpha.
For sure, yeah. So Bitcoin is not the first digital currency there is. We've all had digital currency: iTunes credits, Facebook, credits, Xbox points. These are all digital currencies, and there's always been digital transactions. PayPal, MasterCard, they're all doing digital transactions. What sets Bitcoin apart is it's the first decentralized digital currency, where there's no middleman in charge of making sure that these Bitcoins go over here and these here, like PayPal does, and it's all completely digital. So you don't have to carry around physical coins. Whenever they do an article in the newspaper, they always have these Bitcoins, and so people think we got like this leather sack on our waist, and they're jangling around. Yeah, it's like pirates.
That's one of my favorite things about being a developer is watching the media cover technology, because it's always so ridiculous.
Or it's the worst, right? You watch them do hackers on TV and on movies, and you're just like, dude, we're not like going through 3D math equations right now. So
boring.
we're not walking around with these gold coins. We actually are just walking around with private keys and public keys, and they're just in a Bitcoin wallet. And you don't have to have know all this math or anything to use Bitcoin. You can just use a phone, and you can go and pay for your coffee. We got Pizza West in La Vista. We got them hooked up with Bitcoin, so they can take Bitcoin. Jones Bros Cupcakes takes them, and so you just have a Bitcoin app on your phone. You put some money into it. You can just go buy Bitcoins at Coinbase.com, or you can buy them from the Bitcoin ATM we have at Jones Bros, and then you can just pay. What makes Bitcoin special is that since you don't have a bank, anybody can start using them today. You don't have to get approved by a big group of, old established people at some institution and they decide whether you should have an account or not with them. They can't shut you down, they can't freeze your funds. You can transfer money all around the world for about a penny and it takes seconds instead. So when I first bought Bitcoin, the first time that I did it, I bought it from Mt. Gox, the infamous Mt. Gox, which got, hacked and people lost money. Well, I didn't lose any money from them. But I had to buy Bitcoins, and so in order to do it, I had to go to my bank. And it's a bank we all know and love here in Omaha. We might be meeting in the basement of the bank that I went to. And so I had to go in and I said, I'd like to transfer money to Japan. And they said, oh, interesting. Okay, so we had to do a wire. And they brought me into this little side office. I had to go find somebody that knew how to do this. And they finally found the right person that had the keys to understand how to wire money internationally. And then they started filling out this form, and they had this, I kid you not, the computer had like these a CRT computer still, and she's clacking away and filling all these things, and she'd keep asking me questions. She'd turn, so now do you do this, and then this? And I had this address, it was some address in Japan. And so then she turned around, she says, now why are you sending this money? So I had to right there tell her why I was sending the money. So I told her that there was a Nigerian prince that had emailed me. So I knew that I was gonna, if I just sent this money. And she paused for a second, she wasn't sure I was joking, and I said, no, I'm buying Bitcoin. And luckily she didn't know what Bitcoin was, because I knew I'd probably get even harder, questions at the time. But I sent it over, and it took a week to get there, and it cost me $40 to send $400 to Japan. And right there, that just shows you why Bitcoin is necessary and why Bitcoin's changing banking right now. I mean, I'm going to meet with the Nebraska State Department of Banking next month to talk about this. They're all thinking about this. We talked with Deb Fisher about it too, and they know Bitcoin's out there and it's changing things. They just don't know how to treat it yet. So anyway, so what makes Bitcoin special is it completely kills companies like Western Union, which I think is kind of a parasite on lower class people that can't afford to send money overseas. It also helps companies that or small businesses in countries that don't necessarily have a healthy, secure banking system or a bad currency. They can, if they use Bitcoin, they can kind of be above all that. And so Bitcoin. This is a miner here. This is the Antminer S3 Plus. And what a miner does is it's a bad name for it. It doesn't actually go out and mine Bitcoins. There's not Bitcoin rocks and you break them apart and find a Bitcoin inside. What it's doing is it's solving the math question, the math problem. So Bitcoin is like a big Sudoku puzzle that takes a long time to solve, but it takes just a millisecond to determine if it's solved correctly. And so all the Bitcoin transactions of the last 10 minutes, they're happening right now. They go into a big Sudoku puzzle, and then these little guys are trying to solve the Sudoku puzzle, just brute force, just random numbers, and to figure out what the Sudoku puzzle is. And once it's solved, then everybody, all the miners in the world know it's been solved. And they know that Bitcoin miner in Brazil is the one that solved it. And so the winner gets 25 Bitcoins. And that's what mining is. It's just a reward that comes from the Bitcoin network, and it goes to that address. And these miners, since they're probably never going to be the one that solves it, to be the lucky miner, what happens is people pool all their miners together, their little miner machines, and then they share the winnings. And so if our group of 10,000 miners gets it, then we're going to split it 10,000 ways, or based on how much you actually solve.
So who set that up to where they would get a reward for solving this stuff?
The beauty of software. There was a developer that we do not know who it was, which I think kind of makes it interesting, but on the other hand, the media focuses on this person and they try to make it the story about Satoshi Nakamoto, who was the original founder. But he wrote a white paper in 2008 that solved the problem we have in computer science called the four generals problem. The four general problem, or the Byzantine generals problem, basically is this. How do you send a message across a hostile network, across a community, you're trying to communicate, and you have enemies trying to, tamper with the message. How do you send it across without getting it tampered and proven that it actually came from this other one? And the reason they call it the four generals problem, or the Byzantine generals problem, is that the Byzantine army back in the day, Thomas could probably tell the year when these were around, they had a lot of fighting in the ranks of the military, where the second in command would purposely undermine the first in command so that he could get the power. And so they, in the story or in the computer science problem, 4 generals are at the 4 corners of a city, north, east, west, south, and they want to coordinate their attack tomorrow at noon, let's say. And so one general sends the message. He sends his, gosh, what is that called? Your person that communicates,
Carrier?
your carrier, yeah, your courier. You send the message across, but along the way, there are people in the city that want to attack the couriers. There's other generals that want to attack the couriers. How do you send that message across all 4 and then know that it came from the right, true source? And computer science professors and doctors and everything, they threw up their hands. They said, we can't solve this problem. It's impossible. You can't do this without a centralized server that says this is the right message. So they kind of gave up on this problem. But then Satoshi Nakamoto, when he came up with the concept of miners and the blockchain and Bitcoin, he solved the problem. He released this white paper and everyone kind of went, wait a minute, I think he just solved this problem that no one's been able to solve. And in doing so, he was able to create a decentralized currency. So now we have the blockchain, which is 100% unhackable. You cannot change the past. You cannot change history, and you can go in and say that block, the Bitcoin that Tomas sent to Thomas was actually sent to me. I can't change that. It's happened. It's in the blockchain. It's been solved by the computers. The Sudoku puzzle is complete. You can look at it and say, yeah, that was the right Sudoku puzzle. And so it's changed banking. So now that wire that takes a week, banks are going to start building their infrastructure on top of Bitcoin. And maybe you'll still use dollars and won and yen and pounds. You might use those when you walk around from store to store. But I think the banks, which is what they're looking at, is they're going to start using the Bitcoin network to send their money back and forth and just convert it on either end because it's more secure. They don't have to hire thousands of people to watch their networks and make sure nobody's hacking it. It can't be hacked. The only thing to be hacked is your computer. Make sure nobody gets on your computer.
So, but when you say can't be hacked, I want to throw in one caveat. Now, I don't know as much about Bitcoin as you do, but I think there was something when you were talking about those pools, and one of them was getting so big that it was solving the block up to like 5 or 6 steps. Is there a potential? Is that one potential downfall?
This is a sophisticated problem. It's called the 51% problem. And so the miners are in a pool, and the problem could happen that a group of, maybe some rich mafia members decide they want to buy all the computers they can get their hands on and start mining Bitcoin, and then they control them. And what they could do with that is since they're solving the Sudoku puzzle the most and the more often, they can kind of invent their own stuff. And that's kind of how it's portrayed as the problem. The reason why that doesn't scare me, or I don't think that's a problem, is because the Bitcoin network is still controlled by the community. And we can see when mining pools are getting too big and too powerful, and people start moving their miners to other pools because nobody wants a monopoly on that hashing power. And then another thing is that we can also cut people out of the network if they're bad actors. And if that does happen, all we have to do is we back up the blockchain to the last block that was known good, that wasn't tainted by the bad players. Mm-hmm. And then we kick them off the network and we start over again, and everything gets made right. And so it would cost billions of dollars for a bad actor to do something like that, because they'd have to compete with the entire world of Bitcoin miners. Mm-hmm. And at the very worst they could do is they could have like 10 minutes where they could spend twice. That's the best they could do. It's just not worth it. And so that's what makes, I think, blockchains such a compelling technology.
Didn't you say it did get hacked though?
So I'm talking, and this is where it gets complex.
Okay.
I was talking about the blockchain, which is it's kind of like the internet is like how we talk to each other. That part is unhackable. What can get hacked is individual computers. If companies are storing all the Bitcoin money that comes in on one computer and they're leaving their passwords around or are easily guessable, that can get hacked. Just like the internet, you can use the internet to talk to your bank, and that's probably hard to crack that secure communication. But if you leave your computer open to the world, that could get hacked. So that's what happens. And so companies are, for example, Coinbase, which is a company I think does a great job with this, all their money is stored off chain in a cold wallet. That's what it's called. What that means is you can make a Bitcoin wallet that is not connected to the internet at all. You can actually create it completely off the internet and no one can get to it. And really, when I say wallet, it's not like a physical leather wallet or something. It's a piece of paper with a code on it, and you can actually send money to it, and it's stored in a vault, and it's protected, and you can't even get to it because it's not on the internet. And so this is what Coinbase does with their money. So even if they were hacked, you might make away with a little bit of money, but all their main assets are stored on, in a vault, in an unhackable, location. It's really, really cool stuff, but you have to, if you're really interested in this, this is where like the brightest minds in cryptography hang out, is in this Bitcoin security world. And oh man, I just sit back and just learn. They're just so smart. I love it.
I got two questions kind of related to that. Well, one comment, one thing I was reading recently that I think to me is almost more exciting than Bitcoin, is just the decentralization. And I think one of the most revolutionary things we could have happen is peer-to-peer DNS, like get rid of ICANN. So that because that just opens up like basically so much freedom to control like what people have access to.
Ooh, that's interesting.
And I know there's people like the people who started Pirate Bay are actually working on this right now. And there's a couple competing, I think, technologies that solve that problem. And obviously you'd have to have a huge shift. But I wonder if long term that would be another area that might get taken over by this blockchain technology. So
that is interesting. Yeah.
So that was one comment. And then the other thing was, obviously this stuff kind of for engineers is exciting, but how do you, and maybe this is part of what you guys do with Alpha Resources, is like, how do we translate this into something that people that aren't into computers are going to want to use?
I'll piggyback that because the only thing I've ever heard of Bitcoin was the one time I heard it got hacked. And I really haven't heard anything since, because I try or think I stay on top of things.
Sure.
But when I heard it kind of was like, okay, is that the next thing that's going out? And now you explained that it's getting bigger and stronger. It's it kind of makes.
Well, I think both questions on that are related. I think we're at a time where I first used a computer. I first got on the internet. Not first used a computer. I first got on the internet in 1995, and I went to UNL and got to go to the computer lab and just got to use the internet. And I was obsessed with like the internet's the next thing. Like we got to connect all these computers. I tried to get everything on the internet. And if you had to get a computer on the internet in the late 90s, oh man, was it hard. You had to download WinSock 32 or 16-bit drivers and put them on the machine, and then set up your TCP/IP stuff, and then finally get a browser, and you had to go get a CD from the store to install it. It was nuts. And the internet, you get a phone in the mail and you just turn it on and it's on the internet and nobody has to think about it. And I think that's where we're at with Bitcoin. It's in those days when people had to go buy a modem and learn about what modem means and how that all works. So as we move forward, what people are doing now is they're calling it blockchain. So they're taking the network part of Bitcoin and they're taking it out and making it its own thing. And I think what's going to happen is we're going to have a lot easier ways to do this money. So now you can go to kiosks and send Bitcoin across the ocean, but nobody knows you're using Bitcoin. You can actually stick in dollars, it converts to Bitcoin in the back end, sends it to another country, and then it's like Western Union in a way. It gets converted to the other currency part there, and people don't even know they're using Bitcoin. And I think that's what we're going to see more. Bitcoin's happy to kind of slip behind the scenes, and as the Bitcoin community is excited to see these things. None of us want, we don't care what the brand of Bitcoin is so much as give us access to this because it's freedom and it opens up all sorts of innovation and neat things.
Because there's definitely kind of like a political tinge to all this stuff, like currency, like free, fiat currencies and things like that. Is that part of like Alpha Resources, is the political side of it, or is it more just focused on the technology?
I don't. So Edward and I and the people that are behind Alpha, we're attracted to Bitcoin mainly for the innovation side of it. The political side does come into play when you talk to people. I mean, do you think that, it's how you feel about central banking and printing money and how the economy runs. That attracts a lot of people that are like economics geeks that love this stuff. That attracts them. But our whole goal at Alpha is to just make Bitcoin more mainstream. We want people to be able to buy things all around Omaha, just go into any store and be able to take out their phone and pay with Bitcoin, because Target got hacked. You get your credit card numbers taken and they had to give you a free year of like Credit Watch in order to pay for that. And Walmart got hacked and Yahoo's emails just got hacked. And Bitcoin, if you pay with Bitcoin, you can't use that data. It doesn't matter. That's been spent, it's safe, you're protected. We love it for those reasons.
Cool. All right, well, we're kind of coming to the end of this show here. Is there any kind of last things we like to do is just give, if there's any websites or information, how do people contact you, whatever you want to share.
Sure, yeah.
Open floor to...
Come check out Vosaic.com, VOSAIC.com, and if you are in the education space or you're interested in the cloud, I'd love to talk to you about Azure versus AWS. I've used both for a long time, and I have enough experience I think I can help people navigate through that. And you can reach me on Twitter at itspaultastic, ITSPAULTASTIC.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys, and catch you next episode.
Thanks.